interesting. Okay. I say that a lot because we may have crossed paths.
What I know. You said you'd been in Oman.
Yeah.
When 9/11 happened, I thought we might have, because I know that there was a lot of Brits. Because your accents are also lovely, so we always love to just talk to you guys.
Yeah, so we were out there. I think we went out June, July time, because we were doing pretty much a British-wide exercise. So we were doing some big training, and we were planned to be out there all the way till December. So that's a long time to take pretty much the whole British Army, the Air Force. I think the Navy was in some waters around the area, and we were constructing camps, being the engineers. We were doing that as well, and taking from down in Salalah, right down the bottom, all the way up to Muscat, and in between. And in between was pretty much just desert. So we were making camps here right in between, MSR, the main supply route. And I think I've said this before in previous episodes, but I think I was 18 or 19 when 9/11 happened. And I was sat in the back of a truck, and it was early morning, and this guy was running over, and he was like, "Oh my God, the Twin Towers have been hit." Now, I was naive. I didn't know what a Twin Tower was. What's a Twin Tower? And they were like, "In America, And so we went into a big tent that we had set up, which had big TVs and stuff to keep us up to date with news around the world. And yeah, we were just watching it, and it just looked like a movie scene, right? It just didn't look surreal. It looked surreal, sorry. And then, being what it was, we then built Special Forces camps. And being so young and seeing these dudes with beards on quad bikes was really cool to see. So, the area that I stayed at, this is why I said okay so many times, is because I stayed at Camp Thumrate, which was an Oman Air Force base.
Yeah.
And that's why I think potentially we may have crossed paths.
We set up the original tent city that was there. There was no tent city, and we rolled in. We trenched it all out. We put in our electrical. We set up all the tents. We set up a chow hall, and then everybody in my little deployed unit was like, the faster we can do this, the faster we can go home. But that was so dumb to think that, because the faster that we did it meant that we could go on to the next place, which is what we did. Everyone was so excited. Oh, we're going home. We're going home. We're all done. We finished. And then Master Sergeant Cade, who was we didn't have an officer with us, so he was in charge. And he said, hey, guess what? We're going to Pakistan. And everyone's like, because the other thing about Master Sergeant Cade, bit of a jokester. So everyone says, also his nickname was Big Daddy. He wanted you to call him that. It's like, oh, Big Daddy, you're so funny. You're a funny guy. And he's like, no, grab your stuff. So we got on a C-130. We flew from Oman, Thumrate, to, I don't know the proper way to say it, but we call it Jacobabad, Pakistan, which is sort of in central part of Pakistan. And that was a little bit sketchy, because once we got in the country, and we were maybe an hour away, I'm assuming you've flown on a C-130.
Or equivalent, or whatever the RAF have got.
Okay. Then that there's no gentle landing slope like on a commercial flight. All of a sudden the pilot just points the nose down, and then that's what we did. And then we're at 300 feet, and the aircrew disappeared for a second. We're like, oh, that's unusual. And they all came back wearing Kevlar. We're like, oh. And they're like, oh, we just got to pop flares if we, whatever. So they're just sitting out there waiting to pop flares. And we're like, wow, you guys wanted to go home real bad. We had it awful nice in Thumrate, Oman. They were putting up a base exchange and everything. So, landed there. We waited for, I think, at least probably a week, maybe more. Maybe it was 2 weeks before anything even arrived, because it was easier to get the people there first than it was to get the equipment there. So we lived in a abandoned hangar. It was us, a Navy SEALs detachment, an Air Force pararescue detachment, some SAS fellows, and some other people that we were never told who or what they were there for. But it's like you said, giant men with beards.
Yeah.
walking around looking terrifying. You know, there was this one guy, there's one SEAL that we became friends with named Joel, and I was just talking to him, and he's casually just, you know, maintaining his 50 caliber sniper rifle. Just, yeah, no big deal, whatever. But yeah, that was a little bit scary. But once we got there, it wasn't nearly as bad as we had expected it to be. The first night it was scary because we could just hear screaming. The city was far away. You know, we were well protected. The U.S. Marine Corps had protected the perimeter, and the city was quite far away. We could hear like shouting and screaming and gunfire just all night long. We're like, well, they're rioting and they're going to run over the gates and they hate America and they're going to destroy us all. No, there's just a big wedding, and apparently it's traditional to just fire off your guns. And you know, wedding will have like 5,000 people at it. So there was a very big wedding, and people were just having a good time.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So C-130, I just want to address that. Is that aircraft also known as a Hercules?
Yes.
There we
exactly
go.
Right.
Because I'm an army guy and I don't really love the ins and outs of the aircraft names. I know it's a Hercules, but not. And then I had to think about the C-130 aspect. So yes, I've flown on those because I think pretty much every country owns some sort.
Yeah, everybody in the world has the C-130. It's my favorite military aircraft, which is most people's is like the F-22. I'm like, no way, the C-130 is so cool.
I mean, the C-130, if we're going to call it that. I always can fall asleep on it because it's got a constant drone.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't know what you guys do, but we have the little yellow earplugs we stick in, and then we put the ear defense on like we've got with these. And then you just have the drone, and then you can feel the change in temperature as well as you go up and down, right? Because it's not really like. No, what's the right word? It's not warmed up or cooled down like a normal traditional
environmentally
airplane.
Controlled in the same way that, you know, your JetBlue or your British Airways 787 might be. It's a little
exactly. And then normally the kit that you travel with, because it's not always just for people, is it? You normally travel with some cargo, and the typical bags that would be piled up and the cam net type thing over the top of it. I'd just climb on the top of that and go to sleep. And then other guys would go to the back of the Hercules and stick up a hammock and sleep in the hammock. So it was, I enjoyed it. It was good, apart from when you did land.
I like it a lot. On our way back, we flew in a C-17 from, we left Pakistan on a C-130. We landed in Muscat, I think, which is the Oman base that's sort of right on. See, my geography is failing.
Yeah, it's like now. Really top. It's the capital of Oman, Muscat.
Okay, yeah. I remember when we were flying in and we were looking down, and you know everything's the same sort of color of brown except for the Lamborghinis and the Ferraris that are like bright yellow and bright red. We're like, where are we? Then after, you know, Pakistan, the base was never nice. It was always very, very Spartan. But we landed there, and you know the British Air Force had a pub set up with pool tables, and you could have 3 beers a night. And none of us had any beers in 3 months, so 3 beers was way more than enough. We had mattresses on our cots instead of just a cot. It was quite lovely. But from there, we took a C-17, which is the Globemaster, I think.
Okay. Yep.
And there was only one pallet on it, so we had the entire cargo bay to ourselves. And my friend Andrew Pena, who's a tail gunner now, he was like breakdancing. He was a big breakdancer. He was like breakdancing at 30,000 feet. And then I fell asleep, and I regret it because during the time I was asleep, they let everybody up in the cockpit and showed them around and everything. It's like always been a dream of mine to go in the cockpit of an airplane, but oh well.
Where did you fly to from Muscat then? You mentioned.
God, I don't even remember. No, we flew from there to the Azores, and we were going to be in the Azores for a day, but we were there for just 3 hours. Okay. And then from the Azores, we went, God, I don't even remember now. I don't think it was a direct flight back to New Mexico, but it may well have been. So, a lot of time in the C-17. I got to fly them all. We left in a C-5, which is the giant, you know, where the nose opens up and you can just drive tanks right into it. That was the plane that we left on, and that is the weirdest. I didn't think we were going to take off. We were just going forever. And I was like, this plane is never leaving the ground. We're going to run out of runway. And all of a sudden it just kind of, like an elephant getting up. And then off we went on a 12-hour flight. Ooh.
Yeah. I don't like long flights from my time in the military, but
No.
So collectively, from the time you flew out to Thumb Rate over to Pakistan and back, how long was that you were away for doing all those little jobs?
I don't think it was much longer than 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
And the idea is that we would go back, and then the next base that needed to be built, we would be called on to go to that one. A lot of the people who were in my unit, they were still forward deployed at other locations, Qatar and I can't even think.
Kuwait, maybe.
Yeah, possibly. There's some people that went to like Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, which I would have loved to go on up there, but I got to go to Bahrain on our way back. That was pretty exciting. That was our 1-day layover.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Have you ever been to Bahrain?
I have not.
They have a shopping mall that only sells gold. It's like 5 stories of just gold. It's incredible. The door is like, 3 feet thick at the front. And at night they just close it like a bank vault. It's incredible.
Worth going, would you say?
I would say, yeah, actually go to Bahrain. It's beautiful there. And it's incredible. And it's a shopping mall for gold. How decadent.
Yeah. Too many rich people maybe in that area.
I would say maybe, yeah.
And so after that, did you see out your time within the military in New Mexico, or was there one more deployment or two?
No, this is what happened. And I mentioned stop loss, which you said that you don't have in the UK. So as soon as 9/11 happened, I was about, I was about 5 months from my end of service. I was supposed to get out in March of 2002, but I had enough leave saved up. I could have got, taken terminal leave in February. But as soon as 9/11 hit, my career field was obviously in demand. So they implemented stop loss, which is where your separation date is delayed until further notice. And every month they would put out a list of whose career field has now been let go from stop loss and what day you're authorized to separate. So I did 6 extra months. I was authorized to separate in September of 2002. And between the time I got back from Pakistan and roughly August, I was looking to cross train, which is, I don't know if you have that, but I wasn't really feeling the electrician's life anymore. And I thought it'd be much more interesting to do something. There are creative fields in the Air Force. There's the public affairs, which is what my wife eventually did, which is a part public relations, part news media. Like she edited the base newspaper. And then there was part of the communication squadron was the photography shop. Oh, how awesome would that be? Like have the Air Force train me on photography, train me on, at the time, the top of the line Photoshop 4 or something, and then get to just like travel all over the place, taking pictures and getting awards. Like I was like, yeah, this sounds incredible. So I was in the process of doing that. My wife and I had just gotten married in June, in July. So we'd only been married a month, and this knocking my door was my friend Darren, who had been with me to build that B2 shelter. And he goes, hey, that's coming down, that we're going to go build that B2 shelter, a bunch of them in Diego Garcia. We don't know how long we're going to be gone, but, get ready for that. I said, I just got married. I didn't want to go someplace far away where we didn't know how long, because I had already been a little bit upset by the fact that our 6-week deployment had turned into a 9-month. And I was kind of expecting that there's a possibility that could happen again. So I chose to stop the cross training and just let my time ride out, and separated in September 24th, I think. And I was on terminal leave for like 3 weeks before that. And I still had to put my uniform on because there was an air show on base, and the requirement was if you're active duty, you had to wear your your uniform still, even though it was my last actual active duty day. I just showed up. Uniform didn't quite look as crisp as maybe it used to when I was active duty, but yeah, that was the last time I wore my uniform as an active duty person. I want to say a lot of people don't wear their uniform on their actual last day.
Yeah.
Because they're on terminal leave. It's like, I've been civilian for 60 days. So, yeah.
Yeah. And how did you feel with leaving? I know you just mentioned about you'd not long been married. There was potential that you're going to go on a big deployment. But was there a bit of you that was sad to leave the military?
Yeah, it didn't hit me as much right away as it did like what I missed out. Like I was very much looking forward to retraining into one of these other career fields. Like I was like very excited about it. And it was just a lot of bureaucracy that kept holding it up. You know, you have to seat 20 different people within a certain amount. It's just, so I was a little sad. And then it was also, it was a little bit of a financial hardship because my wife at the time was an E3 and I went from being an E4 who was about to put on E5 to working at the base exchange as a cash cage, signing people's checks and taking returned items and merchandise and things like that. So yeah, it was tough because they were also, we're still at the same base. So everybody I know is still active duty and look at me, I'm civilian now.
Oh, right. So that's actually a part of that is a job on the base. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, wow,
I work for the AFES, which is the Army and Air Force Exchange Service, which is just the department store on base. And I worked in the back in the cash cage and then worked as a stock boy putting things on the shelves. So is that nicknames anything? Is that like an FX? Because I remember PX, I think. Yeah, the PX is on the Army base, is the post exchange, and the BX is the base exchange.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
See, education.
Yeah.
We used to always get excited when we were going to go to the PX. It's like
the one in Ramstein's legendary, and that was when I was there. They've replaced it since then. So
even in Q8 as well. There's PX there. So, did you want to do that job when you left? And the transition out of the military, was that quite difficult? And was it a case of right, I need a job. That's the only thing available. Let me do it.
Yeah, that was it. It was Alamogordo, New Mexico didn't have a lot of jobs going on at the time. There was a job at like a lumber yard that paid $7.50 an hour, but that was an hour's drive and we only had the one car. And yeah, that's not what I wanted to do. It didn't play out how I wanted it to. And it took a long time to sort of get to a place where I am not dissatisfied with my work. But, my wife stayed in. She was medically disqualified from air traffic control due to migraines. So she ended up cross-training into public affairs, which is something that I had wanted to do. We went to Maryland, which is the Defense Information School, for 3 months while she trained there, lived with some people that we knew. And then she got out and then we went to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona, which was lovely. Okay. That's where my son was born. My oldest son.
Yeah. Nice. So I was going to say your transition out, not being completely civilianized, because you're working on the BX. Did I say that right?
Yes.
And then you move around like you were when you were in. And so what was that like in Arizona for you? Did you fully leave the military and get a proper civvy job? You know what I mean? Like, did you get a job off of camp?
Right away when we got there, I decided to go back to college. And I went back starting like right away, the January semester. And then when my son was born, it was my first kid. And my grades suffered immensely because I was too tired all the time. I couldn't concentrate. And once again, I just let school fall by the wayside. And I joined a commercial electrical company in Tucson called Kelly Electric and did commercial electrical work, which was the military did not prepare me for in the slightest, especially for working in Arizona. We started at 5 a.m., not because we're tough construction guys, but because if you didn't, you would die from heat. So we got out every day at like 1:30 in the afternoon because it'd just be too brutal to work. But yeah, Arizona doesn't pay a lot for commercial electrical work, but it was, I really enjoyed it. It was awesome to, go from the ground up. We'd trench an empty field, an empty dirt lot. And then, 3 months later, there'd be a Chili's restaurant. Hooray. Go get some margaritas, everybody. You're welcome.
Nice. And then what's the rest of, I suppose, your civilian life looking like? Because now we're in 2021.
Yes.
And obviously that's the early 2000s. So is there some points you want to pull out and showcase during your civilian life?
Well, after my wife separated, we didn't know where to go. We didn't want to stay in Tucson because the job market was pretty bad. I mean, we could have gotten jobs making maybe $10 an hour each, but we also knew where the apartments were that people who made $10 an hour lived, and we did not want to live in them with a little kid. So we moved back to Maine. We moved back to the island. And that was not the best experience. I tell the people who work for me, like, I lived the whole life before I started the one that I have now at IGN, because I worked at taking care of a property on the island for this rich family. And that was not very satisfying. And out of desperation, I moved to working at a small family-owned boatyard where I would paint tiny sailboats for rich people. And that was very not satisfying. That was a very unpleasant experience. Then after that, I became a plumber, actually. And that was pretty good. I actually really liked that. I learned a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of things I can do in my house that people are, between the electrical and the plumbing, that people are usually afraid to do.
Yeah, right. Handy man.
It's really come in. Yeah, it saves me hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in things that I can do. I just wish I knew carpentry, but I don't. After I worked for the plumber for a few years, I got another job taking care of a different property for another rich family, and they are lovely, and they treated me so nicely, and the property is beautiful. And yeah, it was kind of annoying some of the times because they could be a little bit unreasonable, but they paid me nice. They treated me nice. They left me alone, which was just one of my favorite things in the world. This is just being left alone for 8 or 9 hours in a day. And then we decided the island life wasn't panning out. There wasn't a lot of opportunity there because even in the jobs that I liked, I was nowhere near to living up to, I don't want to say my potential, but I was definitely settling for, this is what I deserve. This is, what everybody who I know is doing. So like, I should just be happy. And then we moved over here. I already started freelancing for IGN. Actually, I started freelancing for oneup.com, rest in peace, and then moved to IGN for a few years. When we moved over here, I had built up enough freelance work to where I just was like, I'm not going to get a job. I make enough now from freelance that I can, that can be part of our income. My wife had a job. We bought a house. And then 4 months after that, I got hired on full time. And I've been at IGN for 3 years, and I'm an executive editor now. And
wow.
It's awesome. And now I'm living, I was like, I'm 43 and I just started my life. I just hired a young woman who's 23. And she will probably someday be my boss. So, yeah.
So for anybody that's not aware, could you explain IGN? Because
sure.
Not everybody listening to this will be geeks like you and I.
Right. IGN.com is the world's largest entertainment and video gaming website. And it's been around since 1996, I want to say. It was founded by... Well, Per Schneider's one of the founders, but he's a very famous Brit. He started Zap magazine, and Jazz Rignall, also another very famous sort of legendary geek from Britain who used to write for Zap, also founded it. But now I work as the executive editor of Commerce, which is all those affiliate marketing things that people see now. Hey, there's a deal on the Lord of the Rings leather-bound edition that you can pre-order now. So yeah, that's what I'm in charge of, making money for other people. Yeah.
Okay. And so have you always been into like IGN and gaming and
absolutely.
Tech aspects?
Yeah. The video game, since I was a little kid. I mean, I've got I've got a stack of Nintendo Powers that are like handy by just in case.
And
you never know when you're going to need tips on Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. But,
if nobody's watching, if you're listening to this, I would recommend jumping onto YouTube if you can, because Seth's background is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, do you want to explain quickly what we've got here? We've got some video games, right?
These are review units that are property of IGN.com, but they live in my house because I reviewed them. That is a arcade 1-up 4-player Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cabinet that has Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. And on the other side, we have Mortal Kombat arcade 1-up cabinet, Mortal Kombat 2, and Mortal Kombat 3. You don't have to put quarters into them. If it were possible to have friends over, we would be playing these right now. And then the rest of it's just, video game books. And I've got all these Transformer toys that I've collected and just all the stuff that I couldn't afford when I was a kid. I'm, sort of rebuilding it back up now. So there's just, it's a disaster. If you aren't watching this, if you're just listening, it's quite messy. It's supposed to have been cleaned up many months ago. Hoping today that I can, I'm not going to do it today. I have other things to do.
And I know you host a podcast, or co-host, or step-up host.
I'm a stand-in host for the Nintendo Voice. I used to be the permanent temporary host because the regular host Casey DeFreitas was on hiatus, where she was recovering from repetitive motion injuries, actually. And so while she was out, rather than keep shuffling through guest hosts, they just like, do you want to do it? And I was like, yes, I do. Obviously, why would I not want to host like my favorite Nintendo podcast? So yeah. And then now Casey's back, and if Casey's gone, she'll ask me to fill in, or she'll ask me to be on the show. And it's my favorite. I love it so much because the Nintendo Voice Chat community is super nice and super cool and very fun.
It is, yeah. And as I shared with you, I've been listening since the Nintendo Switch came out, and NBC was talking about the Zelda Breath of the Wild. So I've been listening for quite a few years.
Yeah.
And I remember you talking about playing games, or video games, should I say, whilst out around the world with the Air Force. Is that right? You got to play some video games on your downtime?
Yeah. There was this one guy, he was a metal worker. This was after 9/11. He worked... he's a sheet metal worker, and he was very talented. He was also very hardcore video gamer. So as everyone's getting ready to go off to wherever, he built this official looking, it looked like something that was issued from the United States government. And it was a box, and remind you, this is 2001. It was a padded box that he could drop his CRT television, his cathode ray tube television, his PlayStation 2, and a selection of games, and have them fly to wherever he needed them to be safely and efficiently. And it looked like a piece of official equipment. So they would put it on the pallet, and then they would unload it, and he just undid it and hooked it up. And I don't know where he was, but he had, probably one of the most popular tents on the base, because there was a PlayStation 2 inside that he had brought. I just brought like my Game Boy, and then my Game Boy Advance with me. And then it was just so much more primitive than it is now.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely something that we try and do, right? When we deploy to try and keep ourselves sane and entertained. And I was the guy that would take out, do you remember VHS tapes? Do you remember those? Yeah. So I had a TV and cassette tape combi.
Nice.
I forget how big it was, maybe 15 inches, not very big, but it was big enough. And I would pack that up and get that sent out to us. And one of the other guys would bring out a PlayStation. And I remember when we were out in Afghanistan, between foot patrols and vehicle patrols that we did, we would all play Bandicoot.
Crash Bandicoot,
yeah, on the PlayStation, and watch movies and other things. So, video gaming is definitely a thing that we try and do.
When we were in Albania, we had to build a morale, recreation, and welfare center, which was just a tent with a large screen TV in it. This was 1999, so it was those projection, rear projection TVs that looked terrible. But there was only one supply guy on the base, and he was with us.
Yeah.
So he requisitioned this TV for the MRW center, or the whatever, for the morale tent. But he also got one for our headquarters tent. So, and he also got us a PlayStation 1. So we had an NHL 1995 or 99 tournament between all the members of our squadron on a giant TV on a PlayStation in Tirana, Albania, running off of generator power. So that was, and by the way, I took home the crown. I'm Albania's greatest NHL 99 player.
I hope you still got that trophy.
I don't even know I think it was just all about pride.
Fantastic. And I'm just going to say as well, I've been watching you whilst we've been doing this recording. And because you've got so much, I guess, experience in this, you're looking at the camera. And I realized I'm not. So when I'm talking to...
That's something I've only just started doing. And I only noticed it because Casey, who's the host of NBC, she's so good at it. She looks at the camera and speaks. And I am looking, at myself or somebody else on the screen the entire time. Like, oh, how stupid do I look? So it is something I've only recently started doing, and it is. I'm glad that it's noticeable. So that's exciting.
And I'm going to talk to you right now, although it feels weird because I'm not looking at your face. Your face is down here, so maybe on future recordings I'll be a bit more professional. But right now, this still feels odd.
It is. It's very strange.
Brilliant. Well, I feel we've pretty much covered everything that you did in your career and even brought us up to date with 2021. Is there anything that we didn't get to cover that you wanted to mention from your time in the military?
From my time in the military, I think we covered it pretty well. If there's anybody out there who's listening, who's not a veteran but is active duty, and you have the opportunity to go someplace cool, man, just don't waste your time. Well, get out of your head, get out and see the countryside.
Okay, that's really good because that leads me on to my next part. And that is to ask you for any words of wisdom for people potentially looking or thinking of joining the military, not just the US. Hey, I'm looking at the camera now. Not just the US, but around the world. What advice do you have? And maybe just replay what you've just said there about seeing where you are stationed.
Yeah, I would say there was a tendency I noticed, and it was not just among me, but it was sort of among everybody, that whatever your duty station was the worst, and you're going to hate it here. And that's something I've learned since now that I'm a much older adult, is that if you meet somebody and the first thing they tell you is something negative or something down, you should probably avoid that person. Whereas before I thought, well, this person's cool. They're telling me how it is. And I would end up being negative like them. There were experiences outside of my control at Ramstein Air Base, particularly with leadership, that made it a very unpleasant place to be at the time. The commander was not good. The first sergeant was worse, and they didn't like junior enlisted at all. However, I had weekends. I had time off. I could have just done more when I was in Germany. I mean, to be fair, I would sometimes just get in my car and just drive through the German countryside, and it was lovely and beautiful, but I didn't do that all the time. So that's my advice. Avoid that negative person who's telling you how bad it is. Get out of your own head and maybe just see a place that you never have seen before. And you may never, I have not been back to Europe since then, so may never see it again.
Great advice. And I think on my second tour of Germany, I definitely took advice. I definitely did more in the Paderborn area. And the last part is, do you, look at me again, I'm looking at the camera. Do you, again, have any advice for people that are just about to leave the military to become a veteran, or maybe have been a veteran for 5 or 10 years, and you've got some tips from the time that you've become a civilian?
Well, yeah, this is something that my wife is actually very active in right now, is helping. She does volunteer for organizations that help transitioning military members who are about to get out into the civilian world. And one thing I had been told, and that they briefed us, endlessly about, was like, your military experience is your ticket to high paying jobs and all this respect. And so I would go into an area or of my career or any place expecting that because I'm a veteran, I'm automatically going to get like a leg up. And it felt like in a lot of instances, it was a leg down. And I think that's because my expectations were that it was going to be so much. It was the transitional period. And I don't want to scare anybody. It was much harder than I had anticipated it. And that I had been briefed that it was going to be very easy for me. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I didn't prepare adequately. I mean, I was prepared to re-enlist. And then, 2 or 3 months before I decided not to. And instead of taking my time and getting ready, instead of taking advantage of the fact that when I was in the Air Force, you could go to college for free, I decided to not do that because I was like, hey, when I get out, I'll just go to college on the GI Bill. It'll be fine. I'll be a single guy. Wrong. I was married. Take advantage of all of this stuff that you can while you're in. And then when you get out, it'll be that much easier. But people like when you're a veteran, but that's not going to be the make or break point for a lot of people. I think if they're looking to hire you, I think you have to sell yourself who is a veteran to get a leg up. And, then it just becomes a nice to have perk that no one can ever take away from you.
Yeah. Yeah. Great advice. And I think I had that mindset as well. But reality is you've still got to work your way up. So, Seth, thank you so much. Again, I'm trying not to look at you down here on my screen. Thanks, Casey, if you're listening, by the way. We're trying our best. I just want to say thank you so much for everything you've shared. And just letting people know what you've been through during your time in the military.
It was awesome. Thanks for having me on. This is what a great way to spend a Monday morning.
No worries. And also thank you for your time because yes, it's Monday morning, Monday afternoon for me, but not every time is not something we have forever. So thank you for giving up some of that today to be on the show.
It's my pleasure.
And last but not least, thank you for your service.
Again, it's my pleasure. I had a good time.
Excellent.
And likewise, thank you for yours.
Oh, not a problem. I enjoyed it and I would do it all again.
Same.
That's great. Thanks, Seth.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been Military Veterans Podcast. Out.